What's up, everybody? MrPhilFox, Drops of Hope Ministries, with a special guest, Vocab Malone, Street Apologist.
What's going on?
Sorry about that, Vocab. A little quick on the trigger. But yeah, why don't you introduce yourself, brother? I know most of the folks out here in the community already know you. But yeah, why don't you introduce yourself, brother?
Well, I'm a Christian and an apologist and care about evangelism and Bible study. I'm out here in Phoenix, Arizona, and I've been doing these things for a while. I used to be a more blogger, and kind of doing things on the radio, FM AM dial. But then one day I realized I didn't have to pay a radio station hundreds of dollars per hour to get airtime, and said you could just hit YouTube. And so now I've been on YouTube and social media for a while instead, and it's been going good for the past couple of years.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, that's pretty crazy, because that's sort of how my whole thing started as well, as not the radio stuff, but I started with doing blogs and whatnot, and did pastoral ministry for a while and all that, but yeah, that's how my own personal ministry started, was with just doing blogs, and people were enjoying it and wanting me to do more of it, and so so I'm sort of morphed into this whole thing. But I really do have to say, I was just telling Vocab just before we got on, like, he's sort of the grand, the granddad, or the I guess the godfather of sort of a lot of this urban apologetics ministry, because I've been around for a while, in the chats and whatnot, and then it was really Vocab that sort of inspired me to really start doing some of the YouTube stuff and all this kind of stuff, and so I have to say, sort of a thank you, and also the and for real, like, I am absolutely just honored to have someone of your caliber on. I mean, I've had some great people on for sure, but it's just, I've always looked up to you, and I've always looked up to your, the charisma and your willingness to share with people, and to really, just be an advocate for pushing apologetics and just ministry itself forward. So Vocab, from the bottom of my heart, for real, I really appreciate you coming on today.
Oh man, thanks. I definitely appreciate that. And you've been a great brother and help and support and encouragement to a lot of people. I know for a fact, myself included. So, props on that. And I think what happened is, because I see a lot of people, that would kind of just hang out in the background and stuff like that. And now they're teaming up and doing stuff. I think what happened is people were like, man, if Vocab could do it, anybody could do it. Let's start. That's what happened, man. And now we got an army. So I'm glad to see that.
Yeah. So before we get into the conversation, we just, give some shout outs here in the chat. Corin, it's good to see you. Always faithful. My sister Dinu. It's never a bad day when I get to see my sister Dinu. And of course, Nate D2.
Yeah, now, and we even got Nate going live now all the time.
Yeah, Nate, Dinu too. Dinu's part of the Bodega Ladies. She's been on BK Apologist platform, and Nate is going to be involved with SOC and BK and Sister Michelle Turner. They're going to be doing this thing called Real Reviews with SOC on SOC's channel Mondays. So yeah, I mean, that's all, first of all, of course, that's all Christ. Christ is the leader and all that, but you have been definitely an influence and inspiration as well, Vocab.
That's
one
exciting.
Of many.
It's exciting to see, bro. It's exciting to see. It's all I
got. Yeah, for real. But CMB, another good brother, waiting for him to put out some more content and whatnot. He's been, saying some stuff in the background and whatever, so Looking forward to that as well. Carl, good to see you. Carm, I'm always intimidated by Carm because she'll put her brother in check. But I always
Well,
tease her.
I guess that's how it is with the Boricua.
And
Just
then
can't help it.
yeah,
Just can't help it.
yeah,
So
straightforward, straight shooter.
she's from Michigan, so I guess it's
Yeah,
you have to do that to just survive out there in the pothole filled streets of Michigan.
Oh yeah, I know all about that, bro. I've been out here for about almost 8 years now, so definitely BK Apologist, my brother. Good to see you in the chat, bro. Another guy who's pushing, he's pushing a lot of folks, pushing them along, inspire them, encouraging them, so he's definitely taken another another Kingdom Warrior seat, pushing people along. Alicia, how you doing? Good to see you. It's always good to see all these people, all my people in the chat here. And Dan and Marine's page, how you guys doing? So let's say Carm says you're trash talking.
Well, first she was in Michigan and I was in Ohio, and so then we had to be rivals. But I don't know, is it really a rivalry if the opposing football team hasn't won one of the main football games? And like how many centuries has it been? However long it's been. I don't know if that's a rivalry, but whatever's going on there with Michigan, Ohio, first that, and now I'm in Arizona, and she's in LA. And if you're in Phoenix, like say for example, comes the NBA, the Western Conference, the Lakers are one of the teams that are always in the Phoenix Suns' way. So we just pretty much hate everything out of LA. So like right now, this finals, I don't care who's playing them. Just let the Lakers lose. Now we know it's a long shot, because so it happens when you can buy a team, but we're still crossing our fingers, hoping, praying, that the Heat could pull through. So LA has one less ring, but we'll find out what happens.
Sorry, bro. I gotta disagree with you there. The Lake Show has been my team since Shaq came on board. So. So I've always been a Lake. First of all, I was a Shaq fan, but then ever since they retired his jersey first, then that's been my team. But SOC, good to see you, brother.
So I'm just saying, I guess we're destined to be rivals, me and Carm, because wherever she's in some other opposing city or state that's horrible, she has bad taste in where she chooses to move. It's not my fault.
I love the family fights here. It's all good.
Maybe she likes the Pistons now. Maybe she doesn't even like the Lakers.
Oh, maybe. Which
one's worse, right? Take your pick.
Yeah. So, brother Vocab, so we brought you on today to talk about this particular group, which you have a ton of experience with. I have not actually had any experience with them other than just in the live chats and those types of things, but this group has some implications which we'll get to here in a little bit within the Native American people and in the context of where I find some of my ministry. Most everybody already understands and knows that I'm full-blood Native American. And, that is an aspect of my ministry. So, so there are some implications that this particular group has and some of their doctrine. So first off, I guess I'm just going to ask, who are the Hebrew Israelites?
Hebrew Israelites, that is it's a broad, diverse group of people, first of all. And so sometimes that's why I use the phrase Hebrew Israelism, because then you're not necessarily discussing the people per se, you're discussing the ideas that adherents hold to, but even that's diverse as well. There's a few things that bind them together that I've never seen any of them disagree on these things. Firstly, at least, notice I'm saying at least, that means there could be other people added in, but at least Black Americans are the true Israelites, at least. So if we talk about one Westers today, because that's most relevant to Native Americans, because they put them on the 12 tribes chart, but at least because there's other ones like Israel of God in Chicago, they would just say, we don't know who the tribes are. And they don't include all these other people on it in the same way. But at least Black Americans are the true Israelites. Number two, modern day Jews are frauds. They're imposters. That's something they all hold to in some manner. I've even seen the ones in Dimona, Israel, who actually live in Israel. They still think that modern day Jews are converts, but they give them credit for upholding the banner of Judaism while the true Israelites didn't know who they were. And so they view them as actually being Gentiles who sort of have a special place in the kingdom because they held it down in the meantime until the true Israelites got their act together. My point is that's sort of a favorable interpretation. That's the most favorable interpretation I've ever seen, but they still think they're imposters in essence, meaning they're not the real Israelites. So those two things. And then a third thing you got to put on there is that in some way, God cares who your dad is. What that just means is it affects your salvation, or if it doesn't affect your salvation, it affects what you're allowed to do once you are saved. They have a different definition of saved, meaning if you're a Gentile convert, you could come in and be a brother or a sister, but you can't teach anybody because you got to know the protocol. Basically, you got to be a dhimmi. Like in Islam, there's a dhimmitude status, second class. It's essentially racial or religious discrimination, but they have a similar thing. So there's always an ethnic hierarchy. So like I was saying, God cares who your dad is. Those are the big ones right there. And usually you could add on, and there's other things I could say. Usually you can add on some kind of emphasis on supposed law keeping. So those four things, I've never seen a Hebrew Israelite group or really even met a Hebrew Israelite individual that doesn't hold to some variation of those to a greater or lesser degree of those four key things. And it looks like the first time this started popping off, Phil, was in the 1880s. And now here we are in 2020, and they seem to be growing and diversifying and splitting and fracturing every day.
Yeah. So basically, Vocab, you're telling me that the Hebrew Israelites are not monolithic, right?
True, but really there's not really any religion that really is.
Sure.
We're talking about the Branch Davidians under David Koresh. They're technically not monolithic, but there's essentially a much more enforced form of uniformity there, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can have situations like that. But, I think people really forget how diverse and global Christianity is. I do not think there's any religion. I don't even think it's really close. It's more diverse than Christianity in its practice and expression and in its global outreach. Literally, there's no place in the world where either, years past or now, Christians have not lived and existed. And there's every people group has been touched, and the expressions are very different because of that. And that's okay. Sometimes we'll make fun of, sort of kind of stiff, more emotional, but that's what they do. And then there's other folks who are a lot more exuberant and they do it a different way. And I think all that's okay. You know what I mean? You praise God. Now, obviously we want good doctrine, but the cultural expression and sort of the non-binding traditions we hold to, it's so diverse. Even right now in 2020, I would say Christianity is getting more diverse all the time because the center of Christendom, and I'd have to explain that if someone wants to explain it, interpret it charitably though. The center of Christendom has really left the West as people sort of thought that's where the center of Christendom was. I'm not necessarily saying I agree with that, but a lot of people, that was sort of a mindset, sort of Christendom, Western civilization, almost synonymous for, thousands of years, or at least 1,000. Well, that's clearly no longer the case. And so, the future of Christianity is moving in a different global direction, the global South to be specific. And that has to do with the Americas, that also and I don't mean Southern United States, I mean Central and South America. Also has to do with Africa, the African continent, and of course, eastward as well, of course, Asia. That's really where you see the strongholds and the growth. India as well. Keep your eye on India. Very interesting things happening there. Really, everything's moving so fast in some of these ways. You can't even really keep track. It's literally the scene in a way is different every year. And so when people, Christianity's dying,
Yeah.
you look at it, America, or the Europe, I guess. Anyways, it's a little off. My point is, though, yes, they're diverse, but you know what, brother? No one's more diverse than us. And I that's true. That is, I think you could prove that. Revelation 5:7, I think, will be the ultimate picture of that. Every nation, tribe, and tongue worships the Lamb. But there's no one more diverse than us. There's just not.
Yeah. No, I mean, I agree wholeheartedly, and 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 unfortunately, that has some negative effects as well. This is sort of kind of following along that same thing as that same thought anyway, is that Christianity as a whole, it's sort of, because of that diversity, we're allowing to sort of pull us apart rather than bring us together. Seeing the things that focusing in on Christ is one thing, but we're allowing these differences to sort of pull us apart, which is sad to see. And I know it's not happening everywhere. You can't just speak in broad generalities, but unfortunately, there are these, a lot of this, whether it's doctrine, whether it's emphasis, whatever it might be, some of these differences tend to pull us apart. So it's been sad to see some of that.
Until the Lord comes back, we might have to kind of deal with a little bit of that. But
yeah, that's for sure. Yeah. So you mentioned some of the core doctrine, but can you dig down with the Hebrew Israelites? What's some of the emphasis on their core doctrine, and does the Bible really teach some of these core doctrines that they claim that are what they say?
Well, what it seems, Phil, is that their what we might call identity doctrine trumps everything else. That's where the emphasis is placed more than anything. Mm-hmm. And so that's why, there's been different methodologies, say, in American evangelicalism throughout the years about maybe what we might call evangelism techniques. But if you look at them, I'll give you some examples. The 4 spiritual laws, that was popular for a while. Bill Bright and Campus Crusade. The end goal was to have people recognize they were a sinner and recognize their need for the Lord Jesus Christ. Or you look at evangelism explosion, and I think they would say things like, if you die today, and Jesus says, why should I let you into heaven, or something like that? What would you say? Or if you died tonight right now, do you know where you would go? Or another opening line that was kind of common. These are sort of cliche, but throughout, the times, God has a wonderful plan for your life, But all these, ultimately, people are trying to get to see in some way or another people's need for a savior. There's more, Reform people sometimes like to actually say, hey, brother, do you know the gospel? Hey, have you heard the gospel? Do you know about the gospel? Something just like that. And there's other ones as well. But the idea is, with whatever mistakes and methodology may be made, and all that, is to get people to see they're sinners in need of a savior. They need Jesus. He can save them and rescue them from their sins. Hebrew Israelism's opening lines tend to be, hey, brother, do you really know who you are? Who's your father? What's your nationality? Things like that. Mm-hmm. Do you know you're it's this interest in, honestly, what is a almost certainly mistaken most of the time ethnic designation. That's the central thing. That's the most important thing. Mm-hmm. And you go through the book of Acts, you look at the first Christians there, who were true, almost all people of Israel, right? You go through and you look. That's nothing like what they were doing. Peter's opening day sermon was all about Jesus Christ fulfilling Old Testament prophecy. He even gave evidence to it. Hey, David's bones are right over there. So this psalm is referring to someone beside David, speaking about he won't decay and see corruption. All this is talking about Jesus and the resurrection, and his tomb's empty. What do we need to do? Repent, get baptized. You see, this is the way the apostles were doing it, because that's what they were supposed to do. What Jesus told them to do, Matthew 28, Acts 1:8, all that, right? My point is, what they're doing is not apostolic in any way. Now, Hebrews like may hear this and say, oh, yeah, but see, they already knew who they were. We didn't know who we were at the time. That'd be their excuse. It's still not apostolic. And it's interesting with the one Westers, these are more hardcore militant type guys. That excuse would kind of be taken away because these guys claim Cornelius was a Gentile. I'm sorry, Cornelius was a Gentile in the sense that he was actually an Israelite, but he had a Gentile state of mind. So he's actually an Israelite. If you read Acts chapter 10, anybody, honestly, with two eyes, maybe even with one eye, can look at it and say, this dude's a Gentile. Like, you don't got to be, gotta be real bright even to pick it up. So my point by saying that is they're sharing the gospel with him, and nobody's talking about like, well, actually, let's check your family tree and find out who you are, or, all this kind of stuff. Do you vibe with this message? So the whole program is messed up, Phil. They start in the wrong place. They end up in the wrong place because they first point you to her nationality, and then they point you to the law. Yeah. So there's a point. The signs are all wrong. It's like the scarecrow in the beginning of the Wizard of Oz. Remember, he kept on changing his arms when he's up there. He's like, he wasn't very helpful with the directions. That's the Hebrew Israelites, man. Scarecrows up there pointing everybody all in the wrong places. Man, get back on the well. They already got on the yellow brick road at that point. But you get the idea. Yeah. So
yeah. No, it is incredibly frustrating, because just like the United States government in the past, just like Mormons do, but this is just another group using my people for their benefit, to push their narrative. And this, that's what frustrates me, with any kind of, people group or exploiting any other people group, right? And for some reason, people think that, Native Americans can just be used and then tossed aside. That's just historically what has been done. So that's the way I see that. And that's what makes it so offensive to me, is that this is just another group doing the same. So, so when I look at this stuff and understand the things that, just like you went over, Vocab, this whole idea of, your identity within the natural realm, then that has spiritual implications. And then, the emphasis on the law, and any Christian who understands and knows that the law it's not a bad thing. It's something that shows us that we're sinners, and it should point us to the cross, essentially. And so, but it's the emphasis on that, which is on the law itself and on who you are. And here's a quick plug, but Vocab does have a book out.
Oh yeah.
So if the and breaks a lot of this down, he's going to get into more detail in this book, and he considers this an intro book, but I mean, there's so much in here, and I have enjoyed this book. Actually, this is like my third or fourth copy, but this book is an amazing book, and go and check it out, because I mean, he gives, and there's a Kindle version of this as well. So I mean, if that fits you better, but Vocab does go into a lot of detail as to some of the mostly the One West type of Israelites, but there's a whole catalog within here that goes into some of the the 10 beliefs of, this is one of the things, 10 beliefs of the One West Israelites, some of their core doctrines. And then he also goes through sort of a catalog of all the different types of Hebrew Israelites. So go and check that out. Amazing book. It's an amazing read. It's very interesting. And because, we need to know this stuff, because there is a common enemy, Vocab, within Hebrew Israelism and most Native American thought. And can you guess who that might be?
Wait, can you say that one more time?
There is a common enemy within Hebrew Israelism.
Oh, right.
And most Native American thought, which is what it makes me nervous, because this common enemy it's an easy target, if you will.
Yeah,
But
the so-called white man.
there you go.
Yeah.
So can you explain to us what the view is of and how they would then approach if one person, let's say they approached a Native American person, or they've identified this person, seen that they're a little bit brown, and then they give them the whole spiel of, you are an Israelite, my brother, and then someone says, hey, well, let me know more about that.
Well, so Hebrew Israelites of the One West variety have something called a 12 tribes chart. And this 12 tribes chart, it is supposed to be the 12 tribes of Israel mapped out onto modern day people groups. And so they'll have different people groups that they'll associate or affiliate with one of the 12 tribes. I'm here right now. I'm trying to go to the IUIC website.
Well, I have the chart up, Vocab, on the
oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Perfect.
On the stream here, so you can look at it from there.
Yeah, so I'm trying to go to their
oh, okay.
No, that's good. So everybody can see. So again, only One Westers hold to this idea. The One Westers came out of a school in Harlem in 1969. But what they do is these particular types of Hebrew Israelites do have two people on the chart, people groups on the chart that would be considered Native Americans, that they would actually be saying, hey, these folks are Israelites. And the two ones on there are Gad and Reuben. And the reason why I was bringing up the Israel Unite, which is israelunite.org, which is IUIC's website, because they're one of the few camps who doesn't just only have videos. They also put some of their rationale or justification for why they say who is who on their website. So if I could, I don't know if you want to send this to you and you want to put on the screen, but I was going to read.
You can share it if you would like.
Here, I'll just send it to you, brother, real quick. I'm just going to send you the link, and you'll see where I am exactly. And what I'm going to do is read some of this, because you'll see this is how they would approach a Native American. So Gad, current name, North American Indians. Location, North America, Canada, and scattered regions of the earth. Gad was the seventh born son of Jacob. His name means troop. The word Indian comes from the Latin word indio, meaning slave. They migrated to the Americas around 536 BC during the Persian captivity. All right, so notice they're saying this group of Israelites left the Americas. I'm saying left for the Americas from the Jews who were in captivity under the Persians. The date they give is 536. They don't specify how right there, but that's what they're claiming. Now, some people who know a little bit about comparative religions should already be noticing there's another religion that makes a very similar claim. The Mormons claim that at a certain point in time, Jews left. I believe it was during the Assyrian captivity. I got to check on the exact dates, and came over here, and Jews are actually the principal ancestors for Native Americans. And so they actually have a similar idea. And ironically enough, they use some of the same resources. Now they go to Genesis 49. This is how they make their determinations. Genesis 49:1. And Jacob called unto his sons and said, gather yourselves together, and that I may tell you that which shall befall you in the last days. The last days occur from the days of Christ till today. So what they're saying is that that this is what's going to happen to you in the future after Jesus leaves, and it's going to be kind of like they usually term it the way when you start waking up is when Jesus is getting close to coming back, although they don't call him Jesus. Genesis 49:19. Gad, a troop shall overcome. Now listen to this. The troop that overcame the tribe of Gad was the United States Cavalry. This war began with the landing on Plymouth Rock in 1620 and ended at the Battle of Wounded Knee in 1890. With these 200 years, a so-called white man has murdered well over 77 million Indians. They murdered countless men, women, and children to occupy stolen lands and establish church and state. Quote, but he shall overcome at the last. They're quoting Genesis 49:19. The tribe of Gad shall overcome America and all the nations with the second coming of the nation of Israel's Messiah, Jesus Christ. So we'll just stop right there real quick. So out of Genesis 49:19, when Jacob is calling his 12 sons together towards the end of his life, this is sort of in the presence of Joseph once they're in Egypt, and he gives these kind of crypto prophecies about each son and says, Gad, a troop shall overcome him, but he shall overcome at the last. They interpret that as the United States cavalry will defeat his descendants, but then when Yahushua or Jesus comes back, then Gad will overcome the United States. So what they would do is, you notice though, partially what would happen is it begins with something that would resonate, hey, there's been a war and an army, fighting against your people. This began in Plymouth Rock, ended at the Battle of Wounded Knee. It was a famous book, Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee, which documented a lot of the atrocities of the United States or Americans. It wasn't always the government, but a lot of times it was against the indigenous population. And tragic things like that again and again and again. And so they bring that out and then say, but hey, you're basically the way it's presented is, but you're going to get revenge. First, you need to recognize who you are. You link up as part of Israel. You get revenge because Jesus is fighting for you. He wasn't a white man. But the thing is, they'll say that, but Jesus doesn't then become a Native American. All the portrayals of Jesus they have still, make him look, depends on which camp it is. But, different camps sometimes even Photoshop real people in there. I think one of the camps uses Idris Elba, if I'm not mistaken, when he had a beard or something for their images. They put Photoshop his face on top of them. But my point is, they make Jesus look like Idris Elba, the actor. So it's not like he becomes Native American. So he may not be, white Jesus, but he's not Native American Jesus either.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? He doesn't become that to them. But nonetheless, that's how they present it. But people will believe it sometimes because what they do is say, see, this is the answer for why what has happened to your ancestors. Why was the cavalry able to beat up your forefathers, and why could so few white men be able to take out so many Native Americans? I'm like, well, it's because your forefathers were disobeying the commandments of God, and them as Israelites were supposed to keep the covenant, and they violated it. And so since they failed, that's why this befell them. So if you keep the commandments again, then you start building the nation. That doesn't happen anymore. And instead you end up having victory. So I was going to read the next part, but I don't know if you want to comment anything on that, brother, because it's your show and you are MrPhilFox.
Well, I did want to point out one thing, Brother George. He said, I find it interesting that people who deny their actual background or heritage will tell other races, especially the indigenous people, who they are. And that's the thing, is, this isn't an Acts 17 moment, where they're trying to come to us and show us and point us the way. We know who we are. We have, there are some folks who can go back 10 generations. They know that far back, and some even farther. I can go back myself personally. I can go back like 6 generations. And if I really did look and study, I could probably go back the 10 generations. Because we know, and there's a lot of our stories and things that have come down the line. And I've been doing some research as well, as to, some of this lineage, and shout out to Brother Faithful to God. He sort of turned me on to some of this stuff, but I've been looking at some of the DNA haplogroups and where they've traced and where we've come from. And then doing some of that research, I stumbled onto this archaeological find where there was this boy who was part of the Clovis culture, the prehistoric Native Americans. And they believe he was here around 12,000 years ago, um, and he is related to 80% of the native people from North and South America. And he, this little boy, his DNA came from the from the east, and I almost said Samaria, Siberia, and he had Asian lineage. Now, according to the scriptures, and if you match up timelines, I find that very hard to match up those, the timelines and the things when people would come. And but also, one of the verses that these people try to use is the first in First Chronicles 5. The Reubenites and the Gadites and the half tribe of Manasseh, had vigilant men who carried shields and swords and drew the bow, and they were expert in war. I've heard that said to me several times. And then I immediately follow the question of, okay, so if they had technology like swords and shields, where did they go? Because Native American people were very were prehistoric. Our weapons were very crude. We didn't have swords, and we didn't have ironsmiths, and we didn't have a lot of these types of things, that these technologies, if you will, that a lot of the tribes already had. And where did we lose it? Because we would have to lose a whole, or we would have to lose a lot of memory, because I'm sure we knew where to get it, how to get it, if we could find it, how to mine it, and then how to then use it if all of a sudden we couldn't find in this country. But then we would, or where is the sites, archaeological sites, where we could find these types of things? Because we've never found a sword here in America amongst the
that's interesting you say that, because the Book of Mormon, which is supposed to detail these pre-Columbian peoples, gives them all kinds of things that are anachronistic. They're out of time. Now, I've recently dealt with a Mormon apologist, and he tries to explain all these things away. For example, the Book of Mormon speaks about the Native Americans before Columbus having horses. Horses were introduced
by the Spaniards.
Yeah, and so the time frame would be off for them to have horses. So the Mormon apologist I know says, well, there's animals that have like different names, even though, or they have a name that sounds a certain way, like a meerkat, but that's not really what it is. And we don't know what this animal is for sure. It could have been something that Joseph Smith saw and was able to see that God showed him that he didn't have a word for, and just said, well, for all intents and purposes, that's a horse. For example, that's like the way Kwaku, for example, explained it. Or it speaks of them having steel. And, there's no evidence of that being a possibility. It takes a certain level of smelting technology to be able to produce steel. And the Book of Mormon says steel. Well, Kwaku will say, well, we found metals over here. We have found metals, in Mesoamerica or pre-Columbia, that kind of thing. But metal's not steel. And they'll say, well, maybe Joseph Smith saw it, but he just used the word steel for metal. You see, and it go, or silk. The silk was mentioned in the Book of Mormon as Native Americans having that. And I'm like, well, there could be. So the list just goes on and on of these kinds of things. And the interesting thing is that Hebrew Israelites, they don't have that same thing, because they don't have the Book of Mormon, except for one camp actually does. But they are still trying to do the same kind of ad hoc proof to show Native Americans are actually lost Israelites. Again, it's only the one Westers, but they are trying to do that. And in fact, I think George brought this up. The big one they point to is a book by James Adair. That's the big one. James Adair came over to America at that time. He lived from 1714 to 1796. And he was a Scottish-Irish immigrant. And it looks like he spent basically about 40 years among the Native Americans and made notes about it, and then published a book called History of the American Indians. And he basically tried to marshal proof in this, mainly in the southeastern United States, that, hey, the Native Americans are actually lost tribe of Israel, one of the lost tribes of Israel. And so you can find this book for free online, for example, at various Mormon websites. For example, I have one up in front of me, olivercowdery.com, and it's called Oliver's Bookshelf, the premier website for early Mormon history. And on here, they have James Adair's book. They have a different birth and death date than I just gave, but it's hard sometimes to get variations with older people like that. But it actually goes through, and let me show you some of the argumentation that he would give here. So first of all, the book actually is somewhat helpful because Adair seemed to have a general respect instead of a patronizing attitude towards the Native Americans, and a lot of white folks at that time didn't do that. So it helped that he wasn't kind of just basically insulting them and patronizing the whole time. He seemed to be generally interested in the culture. So there are some helpful things. But now I turn to an article at forward.com. And it's called When Native Americans Were the Lost Tribes of Israel. And I think it has some helpful information about the Adair book. I'll read. And it says this. He wrote it to prove that Native Americans were Jews. And in support of this claim, he marshals an array of absurd evidence. Adair thought, for instance, that both Hebrews and Native peoples forced menstruating women into small huts for what he called lunar retreats. He also drew linguistic connections so tenuous they would make a Hasidic preacher grimace. The Muskegee, for instance, reportedly called blasphemers Yah Alge, which sounded to Adair like the Hebrew name for God, which he rendered Yehu Elohim. But notice this is the name the Muskegee would call blasphemers, and it's Yah Algehe. But he was like, well, that sounds like Yahweh Elohim. But he's saying they would call the blasphemers the name that sounds like Yahweh Elohim. So like some kind of transmutated Hebrew is what he's trying to say, but it's not accurate. Adair filtered all his carefully reported ethnographic details through his ludicrous frame. So even though his theory was bizarre, his actual notes were good. So that's why the book still has some value. As carefully as he studied Native Americans, he was constantly casting them as minor actors in a biblical drama, never seeing them on their own terms. And then it goes on there. I have some other information about the Adair book, but the point to say that is to show that this idea of Native Americans being one of the lost tribes of Israel is actually an idea that goes back to basically almost pre-revolutionary America. It's a pretty old idea that's been around for a while. In fact, there's a great book on it called Old Canaan in a New World. Old Canaan in a New World, Native Americans and the Lost Tribes of Israel. It's on NYU Press. It's by Elizabeth Fenton. And it explains this. And there's different things, but part of it was a lot of people viewed what was called the New World at the time. Europeans would call it the New World. They viewed it as not everyone had a uniform opinion, obviously, but there was enough people that thought there was this new opportunity, this new chance. And there was this idea of God was also doing something new, almost making kind of a new covenant nation. And some of these folks had a very high messianic expectation. So, Europe was loosely Christian. They'll call it Christendom. I'm not saying all the people were Christian, but even like the most secular person a lot of times would filter their bad ideas through kind of a general Christian-y framework a lot of times. And you can see it. Yeah. So their idea, and this is more of people I think who are more religiously serious, though, actually, the people I'm talking about now, a lot of them read Romans 11 as saying, for Christ to come back, there first had to be an end days or end times revival among native Jew, actual sons of Jacob blood lineage. You know what I mean? If you read Romans 11 in the end, you'll see what I'm saying about all Israel being saved. But a lot of Europeans who were the explorers and colonialists and all that, and the traders and navigators, for the most part, they basically had kind of given up on the Jews they knew of being successful for this. You know, there's a lot of anti-Semitism, you know, look at Spain. And so they weren't really thinking they were going to be converted. But when they stumbled across these people in the Americas, they're like, well, where did these people come from? Maybe when the other 10 more northern tribes wandered out, they ended up over here. Because, you know, they didn't know anything about a land bridge or whatever. So there was this theory of these could be the lost Jews. Because, see, evolution hadn't like taken hold of people's imagination. It wasn't really a theory in the way it would be. There was sort of evolutionary pre-ideas, but it wasn't. Darwin didn't control people's minds. So they had an idea of a monolingual, monoethnic origin point, meaning most people generally thought there was one ancestor to all humans. And so there would be some kind of relation. And by the way, that's true. And so they are looking over here and thinking, well, where did they come from? You know, they didn't have an idea of like maybe a separate evolutionary tree or anything like that. They were thinking they must have came from on the other side, but how? Big theory was they were the lost tribes of Israel. So what happened is when people would come over, they would look at the Native Americans in that lens, and even missionaries, not all of the missionaries, but a lot of them thought that's not who these people. So they would look for similarities and filter it through, no matter how bad of an idea was. And that's part of what, for some missionaries, some people just wanted to share the gospel. Okay, you know, this is complex. You know, like to name, there's individuals doing things, but wanted to share the gospel to Native Americans because they thought this could be part of the end times revival. If these folks get saved, come to Christ, then Jesus is about to come back, because these are probably actually lost tribes of Jews. And so what happens is there's these old resources, if you want to call them that, from that era of basically these explorers and stuff speculating at various times. Mormons grab hold of that stuff. But see, Christian apologists who have been dealing with Mormonism were already ahead of the curve on that. They had been pointing out to Mormons, Joseph Smith is putting folklore of the Americas at that time into his holy book. He's saying is translated from an ancient text that was written in Reformed Egyptian. This is clearly very contemporary to Joseph Smith's time, because a lot of Americans didn't know that people were speculating with those ideas back then. But apologists studied and found out what was going on and understood that was a thing, and saw evidence like the James Adair book, and then said, look, this Joseph Smith is clearly not inspired. He's obviously just taking all these factors from his current day and then making it into some religious book, because he has the people leaving and they come over, and what some people say is like a submarine. Other people debate that, and apparently like a compass. It's a bunch of, again, anachronistic stuff, but they come over here and they become the Lamanites and the Nephites. Well, it's interesting because nowadays, what do Mormons do? They say, hey, let's go back and look at this old stuff. And I just saw LDS website today. It said James Adair was talking about the Southeastern Indians, and Joseph Smith didn't have access to this book. So how did he just happen to know that this is the case that it would be? So they try to use what is part of the failure of the Book of Mormon as actually apologetic proof. And then the Hebrew Israelites come along kind of clueless to everything happening before them, to be honest. And I'm speaking again about one Westers only. And they're like, yeah, man. Yeah, Native Americans are also part of the lost tribes. You know, they don't like the word lost tribes, but they're part of the 12 tribes of Israel. And look, the Mormons even recognize it. And then some of them grab the same resources that the Mormons use. So I saw a bunch of Hebrew Israelites sharing a Glenn Beck video one time, because Glenn Beck's he's an LDS. And I was like, this is the weirdest thing. I never thought I'd see the day where a Hebrew Israelite will be sharing a Glenn Beck video to try to prove that Native Americans are Jews. Like that, and that didn't even happen in 2020. That sounds like a 2020 thing, right? He was like sharing a Glenn Beck video to prove that Native Americans are Jews, but that's what was going on. And they do this, but the Mormons are actually much further advanced in their evidences, because the Mormons have an intelligentsia class amongst them, and so I'm kind of afraid in a way for the day, Phil, when the Hebrew Israelites finally realize the Mormons have already done a bunch of bad legwork for us, and they go grab the baton. And they start running with this silly stuff the Mormons have been coming up with to try to prove it. Because even though it's ridiculous, it's much more sophisticated, to be frank with you.
Yeah, well,
the Israelites answers.
Yeah, and then, but on top of that too, the Hebrew Israelites, they tend to have sort of a, the path of least resistance. They they don't like to research. They don't, I mean, they do some sort of research, but it's always clouded, and it always seems like it's not, just like you were saying, like it's not as developed. So it does trouble me, the fact that, there is this stuff out there, and it's going to be so easy just to pick and choose, whatever you want, to sort of and this is classic Hebrew Israelism, is they just only if it'll bolster their argument, and that's what I've seen, is they pick and choose only the stuff that'll bolster their argument, and then they ignore the rest. So you can say or see stuff that might possibly contradict what they're saying, but they'll just pass it off.
Yeah, they don't care about that, and they don't even care. Most of them don't even care if it's inconsistent with other things that they bring forward. You know what I mean? In fact, where I first found out about this James Adair book, it was not from a Mormon. It was from a member of GOCC New York camp. He said, "Hey, man, you really need to take a look at this vocab." And he sent me the link, and I'm like, why is he sending me to a Mormon website? And I looked at it, and I was like, oh, and I kind of started to put this together. This is a while ago this happened. And it's like, oh, I see what's happening. They're trying to use some of this old evidence. But, you go back and you look at the rationale. So back to the Israel Unite Tribe of Gad information. They give some other evidences about how he shall overcome at the last. Revelation 2:26. And then they literally make their own translation. They put in parentheses of the Israelites. It doesn't say that in the Bible, but they literally put that in the Bible. And he of the Israelites that overcometh and keepeth my works. And they literally put in parentheses again, commandments. So they're literally adding to the word of God. If you look at the website, that's a link I sent you, you'll see on Revelation 2:26, they literally add stuff in there for their interpretation unto the end. And then they put again in parentheses, second coming of Christ. So this is one sentence, and they literally in one sentence insert 3 parenthetical interpretive comments to prove their point. To him will I give power over the nations. What they're saying is that, hey, tribe of Gad, Native Americans, you can overcome when Jesus comes back, but you'll also overcome when you start keeping the law. That's saying that's how you'll fulfill the prophecy of Gad. So it's, again, notice it's pointing people, how shall Gad, the troop, overcome the white man? By keeping the law. They literally are pointing people to the law as even in their rationale and apologetic on this website. And then they go on to Revelation 2:27. Look what it says. And he shall rule them with a rod of iron. As the vessels of a potter shall they be broken to shivers, even as I received of my Father. So they'll turn to the Native American and they'll say, hey, white man's kind of been ruling y'all, try to make you slaves and put you on reservations and made you take long marches. Guess what? Read this verse. You're going to get to rule over them. And look how you're going to rule over them with a rod of iron. You're going to smash them. You like that? So it appeals to people's flesh, like in every way. It's not a gospel message. And then they go on Deuteronomy 33:1. And this is the blessing wherewith Moses, the man of God, blessing the children of Israel before his death. And they go on to verse 20. And of Gad. So remember, again, I need everyone to understand. They are telling us the modern day Gadites are Native Americans, with the exception of Reuben, which I don't know if we'll have time to get to that. But just Reuben is supposed to be the Seminoles and related peoples. But that's why they're bringing out these scriptures in relationship to Native Americans. And of Gad, he said, blessed be he that enlargeth Gad. Now, here's their commentary. Listen to this. The Most High God enlarged the tribe of Gad with many sons and daughters, despite the genocide the U.S. cavalry committed against them. There are over 300 so-called Indian nations that make up the tribe of Gad. So it's saying like, look how many folks there are. And what's interesting, I don't know the merit to this. I have heard that modern day levels of Native American population in the United States are equal or greater than supposedly pre-Columbian numbers, but I really don't know how they would know that for sure. Have you ever heard anything like that? I don't know if that's valid or not.
Yeah, there's been, some tribes have recovered according to their historical records.
Yeah.
But there are some tribes that have not been able to, like, for example, one of the tribes that I am, because I'm part of three. I come from the three affiliated tribes of North Dakota. We're better known as the TAT Nation or the MHA Nation, which is the Mandan, Hidatsa, and Arikara tribes. And the Mandan, at one time, I believe I think it was 16,000 strong. And then they got hit with smallpox. They traded with the U.S. government, and the U.S. government gave them blankets infested with smallpox. And then I think it was something like 92% or something like that of the tribe died. And so and today the TAT, the three tribes together is only about 16,000. So there are some tribes that have they're getting greater numbers, but but there's some of that data is misleading because there's some tribes like the I forget their names now. We sort of we always the Cherokee, there's kind of in Indian country, there's kind of a joke because they have a very low blood quantum to be a member of the tribe.
Oh, so you're saying they let anybody in?
Basically, yeah. So there's always a joke because, anytime we introduce ourselves and people find out that we're Native American, the automatic response is, oh yeah, my great grandmother was a Cherokee princess, or that type of thing. So it's kind of a derogatory thing, but it's sort of a shot because their blood quantum that they would is, they consider you a Cherokee with a significantly low blood quantum. But
yeah, well,
but again, go ahead.
Well, I was saying when I was a kid, it's kind of a long story, but I won't tell the long story. I didn't know I was Sicilian at the time, and so I thought I had different relatives. And so I thought I was part Cherokee or Blackfoot as a kid because I was always trying to explain why I was darker than a lot of my family members and stuff. And I thought it was because I was Native American, because I did that side of the family would have had it. But then I found out it was Sicilian, no Native American blood at all. Anyways, but let's check out the rationale here, Phil. I think you'll I don't know if you'll laugh or cry. Listen to this. He dwelleth as a lion. Again, quoting Deuteronomy 33:20, meaning they dwelled upon the land like predators, and their nature is like a lion, very, very fearsome. I mean, this is how they're interpreting the Bible. I mean, where's the evidence? How is this exegesis? And teareth the arm. They're quoting the Bible again. The North American Indians have become well known for the custom of making a blood brother pact by cutting their arms. Are you reading this, bro? I don't know, man.
I mean, see, and this is, this type of stuff is the stuff that it really, like my oldest daughter said when she was young, it just butters my biscuits, because it's stuff like this. I mean, trying to quote Indianize it, but they have no context. I mean,
is the TAT Nation known for cutting their arms and making blood packs? I'm just asking.
No, not,
See, that's the thing. I kind of feel like some of their rationale they're giving are actually based upon stereotypes.
Yes, exactly. And, and this is what I'm talking about when I'm saying misrepresentation. Like, they're taking these ideas that the white man, would say, or how you would see it in the, you would see it in the old Westerns, that every single time that they would make a kill, it would be like, woo, 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 and it's like,
I mean, that's like the Plains Indians, right? Though, or something.
Yeah. Most of the Plains Indians, and then, again, Soko and Brother George were sort of laughing in the chat, they're saying stuff like, oh yes, we know that they're natives because because you know, they say hey awaya, hey hey awaya, you know, and we're like, no, those are just chants. Those are just things that helped us vocalize to put in the actual language. You know, those were, you know, but of course,
no. See, you don't understand because you forgot who you are.
yeah.
That
See,
is elements of lost Hebrew in your language. You think it's an accident? It sounds that way. Come on, man.
yeah,
You don't know who you are, brother. Now look at this
yeah.
next one. With the crown of the head represents the crown of feathers the Indians wore. I feel like this is almost like a 7-year-old's perception of Native American, you know, like Native American culture. Like after watching a lot of cowboy movies, this is the way the custom of the Blood Brother Pact was generally done with one who wore the unusual crown of feathers, the war bonnet, to be accepted in the tribe. I swear, I'm not an expert on the I swear this is only some people. This is only a certain tribes. They're saying this is like all of Gad or something. I mean,
yeah. And see, and that's the other problem too, you know, is tribe of Gad, supposedly all Native Americans.
mm-hmm.
And then where this is the other inconsistency is they don't understand the history, because they put the Seminole Indians, and the Seminole are not, they're native to here, but they're a group that were a conglomerate of some of the tribes, the people that left the tribes that did not want to make the grand march westward, and some of the slaves. So
Yeah,
they are a recent tribe. This tribe is a recent tribe. They are just now made up, and it's a conglomerate. Weird?
They don't have their ancestors in Reuben. Their ancestors to the Seminoles are still stuck in Gad. I always point this out to them. I was like, how do you have the ancestors of the Seminoles in Gad, but you have the Seminoles themselves in I said it backwards. I said it backwards. How do you have? Yeah, wait, I said it right. How do you have the ancestors of the Seminoles in Gad, but the Seminoles themselves in Reuben? Please explain this to me.
Yeah.
But I mean, doesn't it sound like a cowboy movie understanding of like Native American culture?
Yes. I've never read this before, this particular on their website, but
aren't you glad here I came, man? Aren't you glad? Let's finish this. It's not actually too much longer. Okay. And he provided the first part for himself. So they're quoting again Deuteronomy 33:20. Every time you see the italics bold, it's a quote. The tribe of Gad took the best part of the Americas for himself. North America is the largest continent in the world. This is the part that Christopher Columbus was searching for and called it the mainland, because there, in a portion of the lawgiver, was he seated. The tribe of Gad acted as the priests, lawgivers during the migration to the Americas. And he came with the heads of the people. He executed justice of the Lord in his judgments with Israel during the migration. The heads of the people was the tribe of Ephraim, Manasseh. Read Deuteronomy 33:17. Gad executed justice and judgment amongst the 10 tribes of Israel that migrated to the Americas. I got to tell you, actually, Phil, I actually don't understand fully what they're trying to say here. Maybe you can help me out, because I actually don't fully comprehend what they're arguing here.
I don't know.
If you can, it's okay. But I've been trying to figure this out. I don't fully, and I don't always understand everything Hebrew Israelites say, frankly. And I don't know what they're really trying to say here. I'll figure out eventually, but right now I don't fully understand it.
Yeah, I don't. Let's see. This migration piece, I'm not sure what they're saying.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out.
But see, and here's the thing, though, is that that, you know, each as the tribes were coming down, and this is the other portion that is confusing, because even though, yes, the United States Indians the American Indians, we would call ourselves, you know, now we would call ourselves one nation. You know, we see each other as Native Americans. So there is a universalism of our outlook nowadays. But go back into
that's partially thanks to the white man.
Yeah, see. But see, the thing is that there is nuance within the tribes. There's different beliefs within the tribes. There's separate ideologies. Some universal things, of course, because we all came from the Tower of Babel.
Yeah, exactly.
We all came from, so there is going to be remnant of a common, and that's the thing. And BK Apologist pointed this out, is he did a whole show. I can't remember if it was with somebody, if it was just him, but he looked and was looking at the some of these misconceptions that we come, that people groups early on, prehistoric, were they were polytheistic in their thinking, and then they graduate into monotheism. But he found out it's the exact opposite, that people start as monotheistic, and as their civilizations grow up and sort of, intellectualism sort of comes into their cultures. So this idea of, there's no nuance within each tribe, and each tribe sort of had their own BK. Yep. So, but the thing is that, there's this misrepresentation of my people, and not having a clue. And they might sit down with, Joe Schmo off the street, who may or may not understand and know some of these things, and I'm not claiming to be any kind. I can really only just speak to my people. But fortunately, I was within a Native American drum group, and part of that culture, just being in a drum group, is we would go around powwow to powwow to powwow to powwow, and then we would interact with all these different tribes, and some of them were Eastern tribes and Southern tribes and Western tribes, and we would see all the differences and the sharing of the culture. That's what the powwow was for. And so looking at and misrepresenting as if, and see there again, the Hebrew Israelites, they're big on, well, we don't all speak the same thing.
Yeah.
But then when it comes to them dealing with Christians, or even just this topic, the Native American aspect of it, then they just speak in generalities, because they don't have a clue as to what we believed pre-Columbian era. They're not going to go do their research. They're just going to watch, Sundance Kid and Billy the Kid and all this kind of stuff. They're just going to go and watch that, and that's their history lesson, or they read one book from one guy, and they're going to miss all of these nuances and all of these things. So yeah, it does sort of, like I said earlier, it burns my biscuits, when these guys try to tell us who we are, like Brother George said earlier, because we understand and know, and and Native Americans specifically, because there's a mega push, especially within Indian country now, for us to preserve, because a lot of us are losing our way of life, and the languages are dying, and traditions are dying, and all these things. So there is a CMB said he got a 101 in gun smoke. So, but yeah, so there is a massive push to understand and know your own culture within a lot of the tribes. So it is, when Hebrew Israelites do this kind of stuff, and Mormons do this kind of stuff, it is very troubling, because they don't understand fully. And that's why it's important for, that's why I want to have this conversation, Vocab, was because, there are these groups like this. And sort of what brought me into this whole YouTube universe was a good friend of mine. He came to Christ. He was studying his Bible, and he fell into this whole idea of Hebrew Israelism, and still is being influenced by. There's a guy down in your area who's
I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, and so he's kind of gaining some traction within the native people down there, and my brother, him and I went to high school together. He is being heavily influenced by this guy. So now I'm having to understand and know, the nuances of Christianity. I have to know the nuances of the Hebrew Israelite movement. And then now, all of this riffraff, but this is why, and this is what brought me into this whole thing, was because of him. And then from that, it grew into the greater apologetic stuff. But yeah, so.
Well, we're glad you're here, even if the path was not ideal. One thing maybe we could take just a second to do is,
sure.
We'll sort of explain the verse we're looking at. So, we're partially laughing at it because it's ridiculous. Now we're saying we don't fully understand it, but actually, let me show everyone a little bit of what Deuteronomy 33:20 is about. So I'm pulling up the verse. I'm pulling up a couple commentaries and I just have a couple different resources in front of me, and I want to show some people some stuff about what really actually is happening.
Okay, so Deuteronomy what again? I'm sorry.
Deuteronomy 33:20, because what they do is they look for any reference to Gad. And their presupposition is Gad equals Native American. So then they try to cram anything about Native Americans that they think they know into any reference to Gad. That's all that's really happening, because really the chart is based upon dreams and visions and speculation. So it's not really a exegetical or scientific or historical thing. This is all ad hoc evidence. The actual verse it goes together with 20 and 21. Here's what it says. And of Gad, he said, blessed is the one who enlarges Gad like a lion he dwells, and he tears the arm, also the crown of the head. Then he saw the best for himself, for there was the reserved portion of the ruler, and he came with the heads of the people. He executed the righteousness of Yahweh and his judgments with Israel. So remember how IUIC tried to explain it. Let me actually break this down. So it is true Gad is being pictured here with behavior of a warrior. And that does match up with Genesis 49:19. Now, remember, these are actually one of the 12 tribes of actual Israel. So Gad is pictured here as a warrior tribe. And if you notice where it says a lion ready to pounce, so that's clearly about to get some prey. Do you notice how the way they have it, teareth the arm with the crown of the head, doesn't make sense? Okay, I could see the lion tearing the arm, but what is with the crown of the head? What's that? And how would that have to do with the crown of feathers and Native American would have? That's because that's not what it means. What it's saying is Gad is like a lion who rips the prey from arm to head. It's sort of obvious once you actually look at it. That's why I wanted to stop to make sure we're not just sort of being sad about how bad it is. I also want people to know what it's really saying. And this is saying, picture Gad as a lion-like tribe, and they rip their prey, the enemy they fight, from here and there. And it's, once you look at it, you're like, oh, it has nothing to do with the crown of feathers they're wearing. It's going with the lion imagery about how they're a powerful warrior. And so this represents their power here. And if you go on it also kind of is explaining something further, that it seems to be this idea of they're attacking kings, because it says, and he came with the heads of the people, and it speaks about the crown of the head. There may be some idea to help understand, like they're basically attacking the leadership of the enemies, and then takes the best for themselves. And a famous Jewish commentator actually made a quotation to that effect. Rashi, a well-known Jewish commentator. Here's what he said on this verse, quote, he saw good to take for himself territory in the land of Sihon and Og. Now, if you go to Numbers 32, there is a reference to Gad procuring land in the Transjordan area. So this would be an area that could actually sort of, be like where enemies might be, right? And this also makes sense of Genesis 49. What do I mean by that? Genesis 49, which speaks about Gad, it's sort of this prophecy, right, about them, does picture them as a warrior, but now you understand why. Because of the actual placement of Gad within the 12 tribes where they were actually located, they were sort of on the edge of the Israelite border. So what's the point about that? They were sort of on the front line, just in the place that they lived. So they're sort of right there, and they have to be warlike, because this setting in the Transjordan area that Gad settled in exposed them to outside invasion, more so than the tribes located in the center or who were surrounded by other tribes around them. So they had to become valiant fighters, and they were being kind of commended here, even though it's a prophecy, for their victory, for their strength, for their bravery. That is what this is talking about. This is sort of the characteristics of Gad and it's speaking about what they end up doing and sort of the general character of the people. And here's what's so awesome, and this is why I'm glad I pulled up this resource by Currid. He's a great Old Testament scholar, John Currid. He mentions that there's a Moabite stone. It's actually, the name of it is actually called the Moabite stone. It's a proper noun. Capitalize it and you'll be able to find it online. The Moabite stone, it's from the mid 9th century BC. And guess what? It indicates that Gad lived in that land a long time ago, a long time. The reason why I say that is because that Transjordan area was home to 3 kingdoms: Ammon, Moab, and Edom. It's essentially modern day Jordan or southern Israel. There's kind of a blend there. That Transjordan area. My point is, there's a Moabite stone indicating that the Gadites, who are Israelites, were sort of in their area, up in their face, right? Meaning this is evidence of the reality of them being on that spot. So the cool thing is, when we actually look at this, what's really talking about, it's actually speaking about the history of this particular tribe, sort of who they are. It becomes actually much more fascinating, interesting, and obviously likely. Now, the second part, I'm going to read directly from a commentary, because about the best part of the land and stuff like that, because I like the way he explains it here. And I'll explain it's just one paragraph. Gad's choosing the best land for himself calls to mind the circumstances by which that tribe, as well as Reuben and half the tribe of Manasseh, received its territorial allotment. Having seen the lush and desirable lands of the Transjordan, these tribes had requested Moses to allow them to settle there, a request to which the lawgiver somewhat grudgingly acceded. Reuben occupied the southern part, Gad the central, roughly between the Dead Sea and the Sea of Galilee, and Manasseh the northern part. Gad's area was by far the largest and best, conforming well to its description as the leader's portion, which literally means the portion of the inscriber of laws. Okay, now the point by bringing all of that out, and that's from 2021, the point by saying that and bringing that out is to explain this, that if you look, when Israel first went into the promised land, those tribes that we just talked about, including Gad, were like, hey, this pretty cool area, let's just stay right here and you guys go on and take that other stuff. I mean, this is a short version. And the leadership's response was like, well, all right, but you still need to help us fight the battle for your brothers. You're not just going to be chilling. You got your place taken care of, and we're going to go. You still need to help us out, okay? Oh, okay, we'll help you out. So that's what this is talking about. Again, this has nothing to do with whatever this mumbo jumbo is on here about being a lawgiver and all this. It makes no sense what they're saying on here. Has nothing to do with biblical text. It is literally decontextualized. And here's the sad thing, man. We could do this all day. I'm just glad they have it up on a website so you don't have to watch 100 videos. But we'll just finish this last part. First Chronicles 12:8. Notice how they're literally just jumping wherever the Bible mentions Gad. They're just jumping all over. There's no kind of continuity to this. And of the Gadites, they're separated unto David, into the hold, to the wilderness, men of might and men of war, fit for the battle. They could that could handle shield and buckler. Oh, they got a typo here. It says the could handle. So that's a typo there on the website. Shield and buckler, whose faces were like the faces of lions. And now they describe it. The Northern American Indians had fearsome faces like lions because they wore war paint every time they went out to battle. Bro, are you seeing this?
Talk about reading in.
Had war bonnets and all Native Americans wore war paint.
Not true.
I know. That's what I'm saying.
Whammy.
Why do they make it so exaggerated? Look at this. Because they wore war paint every time they went out to battle. If they pull it back a little bit, there's some of the tribes. Some tribes.
No, every single tribe. Every time they mounted their horses, they threw on war paint.
They just go all in, Phil. There's just no turning back for these guys. And we're as swift as the roes deers upon the mountains. Now they explain it. The Northern American Indians were noted for being swift and elusive hunters, to the point that the U.S. cavalry
runners. It says runners here.
Oh yeah, well, I'll check that out. They use the KJV. I don't know. To the point the U.S. cavalry tricked other Israelites, Apaches, and Buffalo Soldiers to aid them in capturing many Indian nations, along with the creation of the lethal Gatling gun, which rendered the bows and arrows of the Indians practically useless. So they're basically saying, hey, look, this is describing Native Americans again. But think about this, Phil. Clearly, First Chronicles is written like a long time ago by Israelites to Israelites, right? They're telling us That doesn't really have anything to do with it, you know. So imagine being like an Israelite reading First Chronicles. Like, say it's hot off the presses, right? I'm using euphemisms here. Hot off the presses, First Chronicles. Turn to chapter 12. First Chronicles, chapter 12. What the heck is this about? I don't know, because, or you interpret it like a normal person would, and you're not able to figure it out because actually you need Nate to tell you, actually, this has to do with the U.S. cavalry and Gatling guns. You thought it had to do with, you know, but you were wrong. You'd be wrong in that assumption. So I'm going to go there and I'm going to give some commentary on First Chronicles 12. But do you have something you want to say about that?
Yeah.
So right?
Yeah. So it says here, it says they were swift as the rose, and they put in parentheses, deers, not deer.
Oh, that's kind of funny. I didn't notice that. I'm sorry. That's kind of funny. Deers. I didn't even catch that at first.
Yeah. And so this is how they equate it.
Fishage.
They were let's see. They were noted for being swift and elusive runners. That's what I was trying to tell you. You said warriors, but runners. So they're talking about our athletic ability.
Right.
And I mean, I guess I can't argue with that, because I mean, there's Billy Mills. He won the Olympic gold.
Well, those things can be true. You're right.
Yeah.
But the question is, does it have anything to do with his text, right?
Exactly. I mean, because you can take anything and make it anything, you know, and that's the thing. I love this, you know, because part of your ministry, especially with this, is that and this is the problem that they have with you. The only problem they have with Vocab Malone is the fact that you put the scripture back in its context. If it were not for that, they'd have no beef with you, because all you're doing is taking their false presuppositions and the things that they're just, quote, learning, and then you're putting it right back in, and then that bucks with their very own theology. And so that's why they have a beef with Vocab Malone, because he is putting it right smack dab back into context, and they don't like it because it doesn't fit their narrative. So again, the deers up in the mountains.
That's funny. I didn't catch that. I'm glad there's two of us, not just me. So here's what's so wild about this. If you look at the passage of First Chronicles 12, it's about David's early supporters. In fact, in some Bibles, it'll actually say David's early supporters as like the superscript. In some, not all, but that's what it's about. It speaks about all these guys coming to David, and it tells you about who they are. I mean, if you look at it, you'll see that's exactly what this whole First Chronicles 12 is. And so when we go to verse 8, we see this second group who is joining up with David. And so these are some Gadites. These are essentially defectors, because they're defectors from King Saul, because David's an outlaw at this point. And so before he fled to the Philistines, where David's main operation was around Ziklag. So he's hiding from Saul in this kind of wilderness stronghold area. And he's got these brave warriors who join him, and they're ready to battle. And what this is saying is they're able to handle a shield and a spear. So this is just speaking about the weapons that they have facility with. That's what it's saying about these particular Gadites. And again, Gad has already been compared to a lion. Here, Gad is being compared to gazelles or deers.
Deers.
And these metaphors are common in the Hebrew Bible. And later on, you even have 7 Gadites who are listed as army commanders who are listed in a certain way. In First Chronicles 2, 13 through 15, and First Chronicles 3, 1 through 3, I believe, as well. And so you look and you see what's actually going on, and it's that it has nothing. Again, it's not talking. You could say there's amazing runners, and you can say there's been some amazing warriors out of the people of Native Americans. That doesn't have anything to do with First Chronicles 12. So see, there's a little bit of way, honestly, where they're trying to appeal to people's ego. You know, the Bible talks about you, brother. Look what it says here. It's speaking about you right here. And the person listening, hey, you're right. We were strong. We are strong warriors. We were known for that. We did handle those weapons. Now, okay, I do think shields were part, but I don't think shields were very common. I don't know if you have extra information about that. I don't have, but
Well, yes, the shields that we had essentially were
like leather, right?
yeah, it was just leather, hardened pieces of leather that were fixed to
Sometimes even wood,
some
maybe.
sticks. Yeah. Well, see it wasn't like wooden sticks like if you think wooden shield, you sort of think of like Braveheart, right?
Oh,
Those kind of
yeah.
but no, but no, they didn't. Yeah, freedom. But yeah, no, we didn't have it was mainly, the rim of it was basically wood, and then it was hardened leather that was over it. So I mean, was it good at deflecting an arrow? Probably not, some kind of blunt object maybe. But yeah, as far as that's what I mean by going back, and because essentially there's all this technology that they had, that the tribes are cited to have: swords, spears. Yes, we had spears, but there was no metalworking in the Americas at that time. There was none. So that's part of they're reading a ton into this, and there's no evidence of that. There's none whatsoever. So go ahead, Vocab.
Maybe this is the last one we'll do as far as these go. First Chronicles 5:18, which they quote as the sons of Reuben and the Gadites and the half tribe of Manasseh, of valiant men able to bear buckler and sword and to shoot with bow, and were skillful in war. And so that is essentially what it says. They left off actually the next line, which is a little odd. They literally leave off the last part of the verse, which says 44,760 able to go to war. Now that's fascinating, and it makes you wonder why they left it off, because it'd be interesting to do some number studies, right? And see, and like how many warriors would these people have had? But see, the question is like, when is it talking about? And that's the thing. It's obvious. The number here actually makes it obvious. It's talking about something essentially contemporaneous to the time of the writing, because it's telling you an actual literal number of the force at that time. It's not even rounded. I mean, it might be rounded up with the ones, but it's 44,760.
Specific number. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's very specific. So it's clear this is a specific point in time that these warriors are ready. And yet they're utilizing everything else to say this is referring to Gadites, but they're leaving off the number that makes it clear that it's very contextual.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's just furthers the point of, if you put it in context, timing, there's timing issues. What time was this? How does it relate? There's contradiction issues. There's loss of technologies, because I'm sure that if they migrated over, okay, however that was it by boat? Was it by, what was it by? That's the first question. How did they get here?
I've heard some say boat. I've heard some say Solomon had a navy, and I heard another theory that said Solomon had a navy and they went out and got lost in the Americas. But that was a different camp than IUIC, because they seem to have a different theory. But go ahead.
Yeah. So these are all questions that I have when it concerns my native people and how they're included in this 12 tribes chart. And then on top of that, then if they had the intellectual knowledge of how to create these things, they would be able to recreate that here in their quote new world.
Right. You're saying they come over basically as like skilled seamen.
Yes.
And they come over, in shipfarers, but then when they end up in the Americas, they're not, there's, people, there's some canoes, but there's not massive vessels to go intercontinental across the oceans. And stuff.
Yes. Because all of our, because you look at any archaeological site, and you look at these things, they're consistent. Even the very what we would call the first Native Americans, they're almost at the Stone Age level as far as technology. So we're saying that these men and women in this culture had very sophisticated swords and shields and were experts, but yet when they fought, it was, I mean, there's all these wars that were with these and if they were experts in warfare, like it says here, but yet when it come to confronting the US government, they were slaughtered. Yes, you can talk about, the technologies and the gun and all that kind of stuff, Gatling gun versus, but there would have been ways for them to fight, and they would have been more organized, because historically, even within our own stories, we were stealing from each other, and we were, there was raids and all these types of things. We were just fighting for survival. That doesn't sound like a very developed people group like these Gadites were. So how do we reconcile that? That's the question. That's what I pose, and I have not heard one good argument as to how we reconcile all these. And it's not even just the Hebrew Israelites, it's the Mormons as well. How do you reconcile that?
Yeah, but don't forget about Sitting Bull and Crazy Horse. They did kick Custer's butt.
They did for sure. Custer was overzealous. And by the way, here's an interesting food for thought. I've never actually put this together, but when I moved to Michigan, Custer, and this isn't really historic, haven't read this in a lot of the history books, but Custer had his own small regiment that what the United States government allowed him to have. And his little regiment were called the Wolverines. And do you know where Custer was from?
Michigan?
Monroe, Michigan. Yeah.
Oh.
So
that's why they're called the Michigan Wolverines.
Wolverines, yeah. So,
well, I guess Wolverines have historically been getting slaughtered, and ever since the days of Custer, all the way now to Ohio State Big Ten football.
Oh man, should have never brought that up. Oh, I mean, I don't have a dog in that fight because
It's part of their tradition, Phil Fox. Wolverines love getting slaughtered by superior forces.
Yeah, by superior forces.
That's for you, Carm.
Yeah, that's a good Carm joke. But yeah, so Vocab Malone. So how do we reconcile all that?
Well, looking at one last time, 1 Chronicles 5:18. What it's talking about is the Transjordan tribes, and speaking there about the expansion and conquest by these basically 2.5 tribes. There's never a date given for these trained soldiers. There was a conflict that they had with the Hagrites in what is it, 1 Chronicles 5:19 through 21. That could be referring to that, or could be referring to some of the battles they had with Arab groups in the area. It's not really clear, because the main point of this little section the Hebrew Israelites are quoting here, is to basically say, here's the reasons for the tribe's success. And it's basically given a physical reason as well as like spiritual reasons, because it does say later on the battle was God's, if you read it to verse 22 of the same section. And so they're just ignoring all that. That's why they drop off the number and then just go to decontextualize this and make this about Native Americans. And I don't even fully understand how this section on Gad ends, but at the end it says bibliography, Stolen Continents by Ronald Wright, page 235. Quote, it appeared that his hands and feet were torn by iron nails. Then said the man, they slew me, so I have gone home to shut the doors of heaven, that they may not see me and again until the earth passes away. Now it is rumored that you, handsome lake, are but a talker with spirits. Now it is true that I am spirit of him who was murdered. Now tell your people that they will become lost when they follow the ways of the white man. So Christ himself warns against Christianity. Shalom. So it looks like what they're saying here, it's, again, the context is not clear, is that Jesus had a vision with the Native American named Handsome Lake to not follow the ways of the white man. But it's sad the way it's worded. It says, so Christ himself warned against Christianity. Whoever wrote the paragraph might need to do a little bit of plural singular editing next time. but that's the way it ends. It's basically quoting from some book saying Jesus came and told the Native Americans, don't follow the ways of the white man. And so what they're trying to say is follow what we do instead.
Yeah.
And maybe we can do another show where we look at the stuff for Reuben or something, because I've looked at that and it's pretty silly. They get in, they even have some pictures and all kinds of stuff. Maybe we could do another show sometime on Reuben, but that's it for Gad for now. Oh boy.
Yeah. Wow. That. Well, I'm glad because I'm gonna sit down and look at this stuff.
Yeah, maybe you can help explain to me exactly what they were trying to say in that one section. I'd have to look at it more. It's just not very clear. Maybe you can figure it out. I mean, some of it's obvious. It's just this part about Gad acting as lawgivers during the migration to the Americas. I don't understand how they getting that, and I don't
know. Maybe it's talking about their ownership of this portion of land or something. I don't know.
The thing is, there's no evidence about Gadites coming to America. How do they have this information that Gadites acted as the lawgivers or priests during the migration to the America?
Yeah.
And that doesn't make sense anyway, because how could Gadites act as priests? Only Levites can act as priests.
Yeah.
This is just insanely confusing. And they're acting as priests to who?
There's no one to conquer. Or, I mean, there's no other group here.
Is it other Gadites? Are they asking the priest to the Seminoles, Reuben? I don't understand what's going on here.
Yeah.
Maybe one day a Hebrew Israelite can explain it to me. But so there's some of that. So you see some of the issues and challenges there. But it seems as if the appeal to Native Americans is not as great and strong, but they've had some success.
Yeah.
I mean, you spoke to that yourself.
Yeah.
And I do need to do a deep dive into this Yahoo out in Arizona who got everyone excited. He's utilizing the Book of Mormon.
Yep.
Seen him rocking the head bonnets?
Yep.
This dude is like rocking all out head bonnets with, I swear he's going to start playing a flute next.
Yeah. For real. I'm surprised he's not banging on the drum.
Instruments and learn how to, I'm kind of making a joke because he's like kind of appropriating like stereotypical elements of culture that I don't really know if he knows what he's really doing. But you've seen him.
Well, he's the natives' token black man, I guess.
Have you seen the video where he was like, I'm telling y'all, the Book of Mormon is for our people. It's an Israelite book. Nephi was a black Jew. Have you seen this? No. I'm not kidding. This is really what he does. It's the most bizarre blending of Hebrew Israelism, Christianity, a little bit in there, Judaism, Native American stereotypical things with Mormonism. That's the thing that really makes it like go over the edge even more.
So we've talked about it before, I think, on some of our Patreon hangout stuff like that. I know Dinu brought it up, and
we'll get there. Right now I'm working on a debate. I am debating a Hebrew Israelite this Sunday night. Not tonight, obviously, but this Sunday night. What is it? Is the church the fulfillment? Is the multinational church the fulfillment of national Israel? Now, the thing is, I know that I'm kind of stupid in a way for doing this debate because I know there's going to be a lot of Christians who aren't going to agree with my perspective on the church being new Israel. Some people just can't stand
replacement theology.
Yeah, that's what they'll say. And so I'm just like, you know what? I'll just bite the bullet. Just whatever, man. I love my Christian brothers and sisters, but I'm just going to go in, whatever. But that's what we're going to debate on Debate Talk for You next Sunday night. And actually, in about an hour and a half, I'm supposed to be doing one of my book reviews on open theism books.
Oh yeah, I've seen that.
Just refuting it.
Well, do you have time for a couple questions here, Vocab?
We could try. I saw that first one. I don't think I have a very good answer, but we could try to interact.
Let's see. So Fred Stanford, big shout out to Fred Stanford. Haven't seen him in a while.
What's up?
Yeah. So how do the BHI explain the language variety in the Native American languages, but are still living languages that are isolate?
Yeah, saying like they're isolated from I don't think they're that deep in. I don't think they're really that deep in to even explain those kinds of questions. I think what I've heard happen is they focus on things they view as loose similarities with some kind of Israelite practice or something like that. Kind of like in the book I just was pointing to you by James Adair. And another thing, my guess is if you asked that question to a Hebrew Israelite in the way you just did, my guess is they would say, oh, there's evidence Native Americans spoke Hebrew. Instead of really talking about what we're talking about, they would point you to a scratching on a rock in New Mexico. And I did a whole show on this. I think it was called Heiser Debunks. It's called Michael Heiser Debunks Hebrew Israelite Stone or something like that. I forget, but it was a live stream where I played Heiser's videos on this stone that's supposed to have Paleo Hebrew on it and discussed the situation. And the short version is there may be some Paleo Hebrew actually on this rock, but all the evidence points to that it was recent within the time all the Americans were here. In fact, probably around the 1800s. It's not 100% clear who did it. There's not really Native American tribes in that area. And it seems like the best candidate, one of the best candidates for who could have done it, actually might have been the Mormon army. And I know that sounds bizarre, but there's some battles going at the time. There's a thing called the Mormon Regiment, and Mormons wanted to try to start showing at the time they were good Americans and not bad Americans. Because if you study the history of Utah, the Mormons were mean to the federal government. They would send tax collectors in there. They'd tar and feather them. Whole crazy situation with hostility between the actual federal government and the settlers of Utah. It's very interesting. But they were trying to kind of get out of that, it looks at this time. And so they had this thing called the Mormon Regiment, and they're like, okay, we'll help too. So they sent these guys out. Now, they didn't end up getting a fight, but they were basically a Mormon Regiment. And some people speculate it could have been even them. But, and I go into this more in the show, but the evidence is irrefutable that it did not exist before a certain date. The earliest you could put it is a certain date, I think in the 1800s. And so the idea that Native Americans scratched Hebrew on there is not likely. And it's and the kind of Hebrew it is, it's kind of scratchy on there, but it gives evidence to other clues. But we talk about it, live stream, Heiser debunks it, but that's the kind of thing they'll do. I never had really a response to that show. It's just like, oh, you're racist, you can't accept it. We're the Israelites. We don't really answer the issues. And there's some other ones they would point to like that, and just go to these old resources, and I'm like, so wait a minute, you trust these I'll use their terms, these 18th century colonial Edomites for history about who people are? You trust them on that? Because if we're going to start listening to them about their ideas about who people are, you know what I mean? But they pick and choose, as you said.
Yeah. So one of many says, how would they deal with Joseph Smith being white?
Well, remember, we were just reading from IUIC's website. That's a One West Camp, the Purple and Gold guys, Israel United in Christ. They don't bring any Mormonism, to my knowledge, into any of their stuff. They use these old resources that Mormons also use for their apologetics, but there's no further, overlap. So that happens, but they don't really have that issue because they just would say Mormonism is a false religion anyway. This group of people, though, that are like this mixture of Native American and Hebrew Israelite tradition. I don't know what they would say about that. I haven't dove deep enough into it. They may simply say, well, the Book of Mormon was written by Black Jews. God just used Joseph Smith to translate it. What's the big deal about that? They may say something like that. Or they may have a different view of white folks. I don't know what this guy's view is on white folks. He might not have such a hostile view. Oh, there it is. Liza and D. New found it. Thank you guys so much. Dr. Michael Heiser debunks Los Lunas Decalogue Stone. Yeah, okay. Yeah. Hey, look, I aired that show in the future. She said it aired October 19, 2020. She probably means 2019.
2019, yeah.
I'm going to air that show, right, Liza? I'm just teasing. Yeah. And this is going to happen 15 days from now. No. But then I think about a year ago we aired that show.
I do remember that, yeah. And Brother George, if you're still around, there's a question. I went back up in the live chat and I couldn't see it. You had a question earlier in the show. So if you're still around, brother, I want you to throw that back in. But I Am Sinless says, Vocab, do you still debate Zadok?
Zadok Ben Israel.
Zadok.
It's been a while since we've talked. We've kind of, I don't say lost track of each other. So I haven't talked to Zadok in a while. What's the last thing that happened? Something happened recently. Oh yeah, he was on you know what? Sometimes I need to think better. Take off my glasses. I don't know. Sometimes you do stuff like that. You know, he was on that guy Ruslan. He was on Ruslan's show. He was on Ruslan's show, representing Hebrew Israelite position on to Ruslan. Yeah, that's what was going on. And I'm trying to remember the exact reason why. There was some reason why Ruslan was getting into it, but I don't remember exactly why. But Zadok was on there. Ruslan's a former Christian rapper. I think he still raps. And Zadok is in those circles as well. So I had him on. He explained his take on Hebrew Israelism. And I watched that and was not happy with it. I didn't think, I left a comment on there basically saying, nah, bro, you're not really representing what Hebrew Israelites believe. And this is a take kind of tailor-made for a Christian audience to kind of make it palatable, whatever. But, he's a good spokesperson, and he's a smart guy. He's a really good artist. I have never had any, beef like that. And I've always told him good things and bad things. And I guess he's done the same for me. So I have certain things about him I like, admire, and respect. But at the end of the day, he's off on a lot of issues. And I worry sometimes he's trying so hard to be palatable to a larger Christian audience that sometimes he fudges the data or fudges his own beliefs and views a little bit. And it kind of looks chameleon-ish sometimes to me. And I know he would probably say that's not right, whatever. But to me, it really looks like sometimes like, bro, you're not really being a straight shooter right now. But, it's just my take on it. But it doesn't mean I don't like him or anything like that. But we haven't done anything for a while. It's been a while. I have some on the channel. If you type in a Christian rapper or Hebrew Israelite rapper, I think you'll find some things. And if you put his name, Zadok Ben Israel, I think you'll find some things. We've done some interactions.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so I don't see any more questions coming up, Vocab, but what do you have coming up, Vocab, in the near future? I know you...
Well, we got tonight. Join me for the book club. We're going to do some books on open theism. I think that'll be helpful for people and fun and important. And after I get off here, I got to study for that. Definitely check out the debates I just did with the Mormon Kwaku.
Yeah, that was good.
My Armenian friend Robbie. Coming up this week on the channel, two very important video premieres. One is I just discovered a brother in the UK who's really good, makes like these short professional Bible study videos. And he has one that's a short response to the Hebrew Israelite and Muslim misuse of Matthew 15:24 and Israel only. So you want to watch that on Tuesday. Then on Thursday, I do some debunking of the Christ myth idea, and that's Thursday. And so I got some good premieres coming up here for now. That's all I got coming up.
Okay.
Oh, and Sunday night, that debate with the guy on Debate Talk for You as well.
Yeah. And then that's next Sunday, right? You said. Yeah. And most of you who are watching, you guys probably already know, Vocab's channel got demonetized.
What?
Yeah, so I mean, we fought pretty hard to try to get that. I wrote a couple letters and sent them out, and
I appreciate that. Well, actually, it's still under review.
Oh, really?
Yes, they never give me an answer. It's actually still being reviewed, so it's actually not a lost cause. It still says application pending. So I don't know. So just know it's demonetized as now, but they actually haven't got a final answer back yet. So
yeah,
so we don't know. I've heard people having to wait a year for it.
Oh wow!
I kid you not. So we'll find out.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so we need to sort of, if you can, back on my Facebook page, there's some templates. Maybe I'll dig back and put those templates in. You can send them to YouTube, and try to state the case. I mean, because essentially he was demonetized for being hate speech, and any of us who understand and know Vocab and his channel and his content, it is not hate speech, and even some of the satire work that him and David Wood did and all this kind of stuff, like that's all satire stuff. That's all.
Take our critique of anti-Semitism as being actually anti-Semitic. That's the only thing I've been able to gather. It because we did a satirical critique of anti-Semitism, something that I hate, and it seems like they took it as anti-Semitic. That's the only thing I've been able to gather from what little data I have, but it's not clear.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, with all that other nonsense out there.
Actual anti-Semitism, you know.
Yeah, I know. It's crazy. So, but so please, family, if you can, every little bit helps. Keep Vocab on the air. Keep him ministry focused. Because it's difficult. So because of this, I know Vocab has had to rearrange his schedule, and he's not able to put out as much content as he has in the past because he's got bills to pay. And unfortunately, this was a very good resource for him, and that's partly why part of what I put into the letter, is that this is for him. Part of his helps with his living expenses, and for him to be able to continue to make money not only for himself, but also to make money for YouTube as well.
It was around $1,100 a month, and about half of it went back into the channel. So I took about half of it for a monthly budget for an editor, and
Yeah.
helps with other things going forward. So that's really what it was. So half of it went directly back into the channel for editors and stuff, and that's about how much money they would get every month.
Yeah.
We'll see. Lord's not done yet. Who knows? There's good stuff that comes out of it. I get to do more other events and shows on the channel, and I also get to do more debates and stuff like that. So maybe there's a time in the season. We'll see. Ecclesiastes speak about different seasons. We'll find out.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And yeah, but yeah, and so so I don't see any more questions, but Mr. Malone, it has been an absolute honor to have you on, and to spend some time and to chop it up with you. And how's your Indiana Jones Bible treating you?
Oh, did I bring it in there? I think I got it. Oh no, it's in the other. Hold on. Did I bring it in here? Oh, I got it right here. I got it right here, actually. Hold on. Since you because it's this is the Bible that I took to church today. This is the Bible I took to church today. And so
yeah.
I don't know if you can really see it, but I'll show everybody. It's got this insane, awesome wrap. I had to open today. That's why it's not all tied up right now. But you tie it, and it goes around. And MrPhilFox actually gave me this. My ESV study Bible was just 100% falling apart. It was so bad that every time I did a show, all these little black flakes, because it was imitation leather, the black flakes would literally get all in the keyboard, and it was creating problems for my equipment because these black flakes from the ESV study Bible. The fake leather were going all over because it was in such bad shape and condition. And then MrPhilFox hooked me up with this and a couple other epic Bibles. Boom. But you might be a smaller one too, but the smaller one's dope. That's more like the mobile one, but this is like the church Bible right here.
Yeah.
Look at this.
Yeah. So yeah, that was fun. Yeah, I seen my man Vocab was rocking this Bible, and I seen stuff, it looked like it was falling apart. So he just needed a new Bible. So that was awesome. Happy to help, happy to be there. But yeah, so Vocab, any last words? I know you got to take off because you got another show coming up, but any last thoughts?
That's it. I mean, I say, thank you very much for everything you do and who you are and the body, and also giving me study Bibles. And I saw Eliza J earlier. I want to thank her for giving resource book. She helps really once a month for I don't know exactly for how long she's been doing it. Once a month, we'll send a different book off the resource list, sometimes even two, and just been a major blessing in helping with that. And that makes a difference because I like to read and have resources, and it's important. And it's just kind of like the tools of the trade. Sometimes I have people over like, what's up with all the books and it's kind of like tools of the trade. I mean, you can do stuff digitally, and I do stuff digitally too. I'm not anti-digital, but at the end of the day, there's some certain things you need books for various reasons. You can't always get them digitally, et cetera, et cetera. Some books you need in various whatever. But Eliza J has really helped with that. So between her and you guys have done a great job of help keep me stocked with some of these important things, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, man. Isaiah Braxton, reach out to me on Facebook. We could probably hook you up with the CSB. I got a couple.
They got the
behind me. I got a bunch of Bibles, bunch of study Bibles. Some of them I have on digital. Some I just keep on. I just keep them on staff, just to give them away. So. But all right, Vocab Malone, again, brother, it is an absolute pleasure to sit down with you and I look up to you. You're definitely not Christ, but I do look up to you and respect you and respect your ministry and all the hard work and all the stuff that you have been doing and have done and will do. And so I just enjoy your ministry. I really do. So most everybody in here is already probably subscribed, but if you're not, Michelle Turner, thank you so much, sister. Appreciate that.
Iowa in the house. She knows what I'm talking about with those Michigan jokes. She knows what's up.
Yeah, she's down in the Ohio area.
From the same city. That's why we got the same attitude.
Okay. Things are getting shout out to my mother in love. With her is my father in love. They're always together, so shout out to my mom. And then my mom was in the chat earlier. But yeah, so yeah, I'm sure they know about you, Vocab, and all that. But yeah, so subscribe to Vocab Malone family. Subscribe, like, share. He's got a fundraiser going on. I think Nate started it, so go and check out that fundraiser. Helps him with his ministry. Write the letter. You can look on my Facebook later on. I'll go back and dig up the letter template, and you can send it off to Facebook. So, all right, guys, love y'all, love Jesus, and may you have a good rest of your Sunday. Be blessed.
God bless y'all. Peace out. Shalom.